The dusty wind swept across the empty plains as the sun dipped low, painting gold along the ridge of the horizon. And Amelia clutched her two daughters closer as they sat beside the old wagon. She had walked miles with blistered feet, her dress torn and her spirit heavy, trying to escape a ranch that held too many memories, some sweet, some painful, but all too powerful to bear. Her husband had died 6 months earlier in an accident out in the barley fields, and every corner of the ranch whispered his name. She'd planned to leave quietly with nothing but a small bag of belongings and the two little girls who depended on her strength. But strength was exactly what she felt she no longer had. As she sat there whispering reassurances to her children, she heard boots crunch against the dirt. She looked up and saw him, Elias, the rancher next door, tall, broad-shouldered, carrying his rifle, with the easy confidence of a man who had lived his whole life under the sun. His horse followed him patiently, and his loyal dog padded at his side. Elias was a man who spoke little but watched much, and right now his steady gaze was on her, not with judgment, but with concern so deep it made her breath catch. "Can you take us to town?" she asked quietly, almost ashamed of the weakness in her voice. For a long moment Elias didn't say a word. Dust swirled around his boots, and the girls clung to their mother, unsure if this man would turn them away. Then Elias shifted his rifle to his other shoulder, exhaled, and stepped closer. "Only if you promise to come back home," he said, his voice low but firm, and the weight of those words hit Amelia like a stone dropped into still water. Home? She didn't know if she had one anymore. She had convinced herself that leaving was the only way to breathe again, to forget the loneliness echoing through the ranch walls. But hearing Elias call it home stirred something inside her, a memory of warmth, safety, laughter on porch steps, the sound of her daughters running barefoot through summer grass. She wanted that again, but fear held her tight. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. Elias crouched down so his eyes were level with the children's. "Town won't give you what you're looking for," he said softly. "But you already have people who would fight for you out here." His eyes flicked up to hers as he added, "You're not alone, even if you think you are." Amelia swallowed hard, fighting the tears pressing at the edges of her eyes. For months she had carried the burden alone, refusing help, refusing comfort. But Elias had always lingered around the edges of her grief, repairing fences when she wasn't looking, leaving firewood by her door on cold mornings, making sure the girls had new shoes for school, though he never admitted who paid for them. She thought it was kindness. She thought it was pity. But now she realized it had been something else, something deeper. She slowly stood up, her legs trembling from exhaustion. "I just need to go into town," she said finally. "Just to think." Elias nodded. "Then I'll take you," he said. He lifted the youngest girl gently onto his horse, then helped the older one climb up behind her. Amelia stood there watching him, seeing the way he handled her daughters with such instinctive gentleness that her chest tightened. When he finally offered her his hand, she hesitated, then slipped her fingers into his rough palm. For a brief moment their eyes locked, and the tension between them said everything they were both too afraid to voice. She climbed up behind her daughters, and Elias took the reins, leading the horse down the long dirt road toward town. The journey was quiet, except for the rustling winds and the occasional sniffle from the girls. Amelia stared at the setting sun, the beauty of it almost cruel in its calm, and wondered if she was making a mistake. Leaving had felt necessary. But now, sitting behind Elias, watching the broad set of his shoulders, she didn't feel relief, only confusion. As the lights of the small town flickered into view, Elias stopped and turned back slightly. "You don't have to go through this alone," he said again, and this time his voice cracked, just enough to reveal what lay beneath. Fear of losing her, fear of watching her walk away forever. Amelia's breath trembled. She wasn't ready to answer, not yet. But somewhere deep inside, a seed of hope stirred. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. And maybe, just maybe, going to town wasn't the beginning of an ending, but the turning of a page she hadn't dared to open before. The lights of town glowed brighter as they arrived, small lanterns flickering against the evening breeze, casting long shadows across the old wooden storefronts. Elias helped the girls down from the horse, then offered his hand to Amelia once more, and she took it with a conflicted heart. There were people bustling about, shopkeepers closing up early, a wagon rolling by, a few townsfolk greeting, Elias with nods of respect, but Amelia felt strangely adrift, like the world around her was too loud and too fast. She had imagined this moment so many times, coming into town, starting fresh, leaving the weight of the ranch behind. But now that she stood here, dust-covered and weary, she didn't feel free at all. Instead, she felt homesick for a place she had convinced herself was nothing but a reminder of loss. Elias kept close, sensing her hesitation. "Take your time," he murmured, guiding her toward the bakery where the owner, an older woman named Mrs. Talcott, immediately ushered the girls inside with warm bread and soft blankets. Amelia watched her daughter settle in, then stepped outside to breathe, her hands shaking. Elias followed her, leaning against the wooden post beside the door, his rifle slung across his back. "Why did you really want to leave?" he asked quietly. Amelia looked out over the empty street. "Because every time I walked into a room, I expected him to still be there," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Because the silence was too loud. Because I didn't know how to raise them alone." Elias turned toward her fully now. "You were never alone," he said firmly. "I've been there. Everyone has. You just kept turning away." A tear slid down Amelia's cheek before she could stop it. "I didn't want to need anyone," she admitted. Elias stepped closer, his boots brushing the edge of her skirt. "Needing people isn't weakness," he said. "It's what keeps us standing." She met his eyes then, deep, steady, storm-soft eyes, and the vulnerability she saw there startled her. Elias wasn't just trying to keep her from leaving. He was terrified of losing her, not because she needed protection, but because he cared, truly cared. She felt the truth of it in the quiet between them, in the way his breath trembled just slightly when she took a step nearer. Inside the bakery, the girls' laughter drifted faintly through the window, pure, innocent, unburdened. Amelia smiled sadly. "They deserve a home," she said. Elias nodded. "They have one," he replied softly. "With you, with me, with all of us who love them." The words washed over her like warm rain, and for the first time in months, Amelia felt the tightness in her chest loosen. Hope flickered. A fragile, trembling hope, but real. "Elias," she whispered, but he held up a gentle hand. "You don't have to say anything tonight," he said. "I only ask one thing." Amelia wiped her tears. "What's that?" Elias stepped close enough that she could feel the heat of him, could smell the faint scent of leather and cedar on his shirt. "Promise you'll come back home," he said. The same words he'd spoken on the road, but this time his voice carried a tenderness that made her heart ache. She looked toward the open, plains stretching beyond town, the road that had brought her here, the road that could lead her anywhere, but her eyes drifted back to Elias, to the warmth in his expression, to the future she suddenly saw shimmering between them, a future not defined by grief but by healing, not by running away but by choosing who to lean on. "Yes," she whispered finally, her voice steady for the first time all day. "I promise." Elias's shoulders relaxed and a slow smile touched his lips. When they returned inside, the girls rushed to Amelia, hugging her legs, their faces bright. She lifted them both into her arms and kissed their foreheads. "We're going home," she said softly. They didn't question it. They didn't need to. They simply smiled, because they trusted her, because they trusted Elias, because sometimes children know the truth long before adults do. As Amelia stepped out into the night, Elias walked beside her, his hand brushing hers, their steps falling naturally in sync, as they turned their backs on town and headed toward the ranch, toward healing, toward hope, toward a home she finally realized she never truly lost. In the quiet of the starlit road, with her daughters safe and Elias walking beside her, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace.